Hello, everybody. My name is June Hlongwane. So it seems that the public attitude around the national dialogue has taken a completely different turn. Obviously, now that we have learned about the estimated cost to carry this national dialogue through, we now know that it's going to cost roughly 700 million for this dialogue to become a thing. Attitudes have completely shifted because the 700 million is going to be taxpayer funded. Staying with the national dialogue, other recent developments, Democratic Alliance, ANC, they added again. DA makes a decision to say, you know what, because you are becoming difficult, they've got the issues with Ramaphosa after the removal of the deputy minister. DA says, screw this, we're out of the national dialogue, we are opting out, right? From a GNU perspective, the DA has come out and said, we are not in support, count us out. I know the EFF has also publicly opposed the idea of a national dialogue, even though the EFF is not in the GNU. And the DA's sort of position or opposition of this national dialogue has not been a silent issue at all. Between utterances from John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille, they have just been firing, right, in terms of why this is a terrible idea, calling it a talk shop, and an end. Now, the remarks from the Democratic Alliance, John, Helen Zille, this then triggered former President Thabo Mbeki. Because remember, this is his precious baby. This is his idea. He conceptualized this whole idea. He is leading it. We now know the Thabo Mbeki Foundation is front and center in terms of making this dialogue a reality. He then gets touched. He's like, what, Helen, DA, John Steenhuisen, how dare you make all of these remarks? He writes a lengthy open letter addressing DA leader John Steenhuisen. And furthermore, John also wrote back in another open letter. So he fired back, responding to the open letter from Thabo Mbeki. So these are the recent developments around this particular issue. So I wanted us to just focus on this issue. I'm going to take just some short bits from the letters from the two, Thabo Mbeki as well as leader John Steenhuisen, who in this instance is speaking on behalf of the Democratic Alliance. And then I'm going to wrap up with a brief comment, my brief commentary on this idea of a national dialogue. So directly quoting from the letter that Thabo Mbeki wrote on how this idea came to be. He's speaking about all of these foundations that he's a part of, all of these talks that he's attending. And then he goes on to say, in this context, I must inform you, now he's speaking to John, addressing John here, that I delivered this Freedom Park address, and out of courtesy, I decided to alert the head of state, President Ramaphosa, about what I would be speaking at Freedom Park, and that I would be making a call for convening of a national dialogue. So then fast forward, Ramaphosa is informed about the national dialogue. And then in the letter, he kind of sets a tone about how Ramaphosa then adopted or approved the idea, right? He then makes a point about Ramaphosa attending a gala dinner hosted by the BBC, a gala dinner of the Black Business Council. Oh yeah, so BBC's Black Business Council, that's abbreviation. And then he quotes here what Ramaphosa delivered at that BBC meeting, basically stating that, okay, after Ramaphosa and I spoke, this was then how Ramaphosa approved the idea. Because then he went on to the BBC. He says here that during the BBC, Ramaphosa made some extempore remarks which do not appear in the published text of his remarks. He said, quoting what Ramaphosa said directly at that BBC meeting, Thabo Mbeki then brings that quotation here to say, this is coming from Ramaphosa addressing the BBC gala dinner, saying, I would like to say that I support what President Thabo Mbeki has put forward as a proposal and look forward to working with him and others to engage in a serious discussion about the dialogue. Again, Thabo Mbeki does note that, of course, this being extempore, meaning they had not necessarily sat to iron out how would we go about. So Ramaphosa was just basically on the spot saying, hey, by the way, audience at the BBC, I just got this idea from Thabo Mbeki, which I think is a brilliant idea of a national dialogue. We are going to go forward. So that is how this came to become. This is how the national dialogue was essentially born. Cool. Then we focus now on page 10 of this very lengthy letter, where he's still talking to John Steenhuisen and basically just firing shots at all of the remarks and saying, you guys are calling this thing a useless exercise. It's not that. It's going to be a success with or without the DA. So don't give yourself too much credit and an end. That's pretty much, a bulk of what this page is saying. But I want to zoom into this particular point, right, which I think answers the question of what is the purpose of this national dialogue. Thabo Mbeki says, thus the people will strive to answer in detail the strategic questions. What is a South Africa we want? And what is a South Africa we do not want? That's it. So I hope you guys are still with me, because came in John Steenhuisen, now following the letter that Mbeki wrote. John Steenhuisen writes back, I think it's a 5-page letter, not as lengthy, but a lot is said in there. But to summarize the letter coming from the Democratic Alliance via John Steenhuisen, the DA is saying, hey, Thabo Mbeki, whatever, but we were not consulted by the ANC. We were not consulted. We were sidelined. There was absolutely no courtesy from the ANC to involve us in this process, despite the fact that we are partners. And again, reiterating the comment, remember I did speak about John Steenhuisen and Helen Zille going on a bit of a media tour to speak against the national dialogue. John Steenhuisen then reiterates those remarks that this national dialogue is basically all about giving the ANC, or ANC trying to regain some relevance. It's all about the ANC, and it has nothing to do with the broader South Africa. And I don't know, guys, we're going to break it down, but I will say the more the ANC just talks, the more you follow along. I read the entire letter that Thabo Mbeki put together. The more they talk, the more they just lose me. The more they just lose me, because I just read this and I'm like, what in the world is going on here? 700 million. I know that's an estimated cost. 700 million. So let's break down a bit of this comment or this letter coming from Mbeki, right? Point 1, Mbeki says the ultimate objective of this national dialogue, right, is to answer South Africa, what is the South Africa that we want versus the South Africa that we don't want, right? And then he speaks about how this will be answered in great detail, right? Whatever. The issue with this particular objective is that we don't want the same thing. If we talk about want, we just do not want the same thing. We are different people, right? That's the bottom line. But when we talk about a South Africa that works, that then goes beyond want. Now we're looking at a South Africa that works, benefits all of us. As diverse as we can be, a South Africa that works benefits all of us, right? So that's a whole different conversation. Now, in order for us to achieve a South Africa that works, what we need is not a dialogue. What we need is to now hone in on these indicators. What are these indicators? Social indicators, economic indicators, institution indicators, political indicators, right? There's multiple of these things that basically give you an idea of the direction that you are taking, or the direction that you're going as a country, as a government, and so forth. Things like unemployment rate, things like the literacy rate, things like GDP, the growth rate of the economy, all of these things, right? All of these indicators are already existing. They are experts on how to measure yourself against these things, what is required, right? Just so we can cross-check ourselves and make sure that we are on the right path. A South Africa that works, for us to get there, we do not need a dialogue. That's not what we need.
We went through a dialogue, a very overarching dialogue, when we drafted our constitution. The constitution that we have today is an outcome of a dialogue. It was broad-based. It was, in the end, the inputs of the people of South Africa that resulted in the constitution that we have. Now, to have those who want to boycott an overarching national manifestation like what we had when we drafted our constitution.
So according to Ramaphosa, the constitution draft came after a dialogue. The Freedom Charter came after a dialogue. What I will say is that, you know what else came after a dialogue, Mr. Ramaphosa? A money heist. Kidnappings. People sit around the table, talk for them to get there, right? Because if we follow this logic of Ramaphosa, we are basically saying that, hey, all these ideas, we just have to sit around and talk, and then voila. Which, again, completely mixes up the order in how these things happen. Take the idea of the Constitution. There first was a need for us, now that we are moving into sort of a new democratic path as a country, there was a transition, right? There was a need for some sort of guiding policy to be formulated, right? when they were picking what type of constitution is going to work best. The need came first. Then the dialogue and the conversations that now saw the constitution being born came after the fact. So if Ramaphosa thinks that it's just talk and then we get the constitution, that's the complete other way around. We first have to be a need. The need arose, therefore people sat. That was just part and parcel of getting to the end goal of then coming up with the constitution. Correct, people did sit and talk, there was dialogue and so forth, but there first was a need for us to formulate something. In the case of this national dialogue that the ANC is throwing in our face, what is the need? What is the need? Because from where I'm standing, if we're saying that we need a dialogue to fix the issue that the ANC has caused, how is that the same thing as the constitution? Because again, it's a Ramaphosa thing. He's very good at these, spinning and just picking words and trying to formulate some, word salad crap. How is it the same thing as when we had to formulate the constitution? These problems that we're facing today, 80% of them are caused by the ANC. So is the ANC again now telling us that we need a dialogue? So lastly, when it comes to the Democratic Alliance, I was just thinking about this, right? And, again, of course, this whole thing stems from the fact that the DA and the ANC are clashing, hence the DA is opposing, blah, blah, blah. So I was thinking about it that whenever this happens, right? So there's just like a lot of people that come up and say, hey, the DA, this must be it. The DA is going to leave, commentators, journalists, people on Twitter. Whenever they go at it, it's almost like the end goal is one way, and that is the DA leaving or the ANC telling the DA to get out, right? And of course, there's only so many beatings someone can take. Us standing on the sidelines are looking at this and saying, DA, you've taken a lot of beatings. The ANC has given you a lot of those. Are you still in it? Are you still in it, right? And of course, this does sometimes tend to weaken their position and they kind of come across as weak. But I thought about it and I'm like, what if for the DA, they are looking at the GNU, or they position the GNU beyond how the ANC is treating them, beyond how the ANC is receiving the Democratic Alliance? What if they're looking at the GNU and saying, okay, cool, our position now as a Democratic Alliance is that we are part of a national government, right? So we are involved in sort of the highest rank that any government person can be involved in towards driving our agenda for South Africa. What if they're looking at it and saying, our focus is South Africa, GNU is just basically how we get there, right? Even though the GNU is formulated by the ANC, but our main focus is South Africa. Because at the end of the day, who owns South Africa? It's not one single person. It's certainly not the ANC. There might be a strong, elements, they have a strong hold and strong influence and an end. Again, in terms of politics, because if you also think about people who, if you think about the electorate, the voting population of the country, that does not even make up the total population of the country. So even if you say, no, the ANC's got 41%, they have the highest support. If you count that actual number of people that vote for the ANC versus the overall population, ANC does not own South Africa. Even if you look at it from their current support base in terms of the political issues. So the ANC is probably thinking, South Africa doesn't belong to you, ANC. So we are probably willing to ride it out with you guys, pretend if we have to be pretending, play along just to get to our ultimate goal, which is to serve South Africa. And I think if you think about it like this, maybe somehow you might end up looking at it and saying, okay, so every single time the ANC does something the DA doesn't approve of, maybe that's why the DA does not immediately pack up and leave. Because if that was the case, it would mean that the DA is saying, we are serving the ANC because they put us in the GNU and not serving South Africa. So it's definitely giving our focus is South Africa. For as long as we can, we will, even if it's difficult or even if it's uncomfortable. And speaking of this GNU, right, another big issue. As of mid-June, the GNU is officially 1 year old. It's past 12 months since it was formed. And here is just a big issue when it comes to this GNU. And that is 1 year into this thing, things are not improving. Things are not improving. Prior to the GNU, the ANC had an outright majority in the 6th administration. And the South Africa's economy was growing on average at 1.3%, 1 year into the GNU. And I found a quote here by I think it's Politics Web, and to read verbatim, right, in terms of how our economy is moving, it says here, not breach the 1% ceiling. With the ANC claiming that they're leading this thing, they're the ones that are driving this thing, and we are stagnant. In fact, it does not look like the economy is moving forward. It's moving backwards if you consider the fact that the population is also growing at quite a fast pace. That's the reality. And to top that, this is the same ANC that is saying to taxpayers, we want to spend approximately 700 million rand to chat, to talk. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Thanks so much for watching. Please, before you go, like this video and also subscribe to this YouTube channel if you found this video to be valuable.